Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about a very renowned, prolific athlete by the name of George Herman Ruth. And as most of us know, Babe Ruth has, multitude of records, or at least, had a lot of them. Eventually a number of them were broken. He retired with 714 career home runs, and he had more than double than whoever was in second place at that time. He still holds records for slugging, career slugging percentage, and the career, I believe it's OPS, which is combining the on-base percentage and slugging percentage. Obviously somebody that was well ahead of his time. And let me give you his birth data first. He was born on February 6, 1895, 1:45 p.m. and believe Baltimore, Maryland. I know it's Maryland anyway. And the chart is based on a chart that was on astrotheme.com. Well, let me start talking about his natal chart. His sun is in Aquarius, and no shocker here. I mean, Ruth was someone that revolutionized baseball and inspired others to become power hitters. He was indeed someone that was far ahead of his own time, at least where baseball was concerned. His ascendant and moon were in Cancer, and I think this is where we saw the compassionate, sympathetic side of the Babe. Ruth received word of a child in New Jersey that had a condition that may have been potentially perilous, at least as far as the story goes. And this was during the 1926 World Series. Ruth sent 2 baseballs to the boy, along with a note stating, "I'll knock a homer for you on Wednesday," and he was referring to Game 4 of the 1926 World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals. And, the Bambino, he, somewhat prophetic, he came through on his promise big time. He wound up belting 3 home runs on that game. Although the Yankees ultimately lost the World Series, and it is stated that he had gone to the boys' home after the series and, said he was sorry for if they didn't win the World Series. And this was truly I think the Cancer, I guess influenced the Cancer ascendant and moon coming through right there. Babe Ruth had a Jupiter conjunct the ascendant, and obviously a larger than life person in stature and figuratively speaking as well. He stood 6'2", weighed 215 pounds, and he was someone, I think this accounted for his jocular, jovial, and exuberant side of him. Had a very robust sense of humor, and also helped with his natural ability for baseball, to play baseball. I remember there was something, I believe Ruth, had answered, which was very funny, which was, typical of this, this aspect in his chart, the Jupiter conjunct ascendant. He was asked, inquired as to, he was making more money than the current president at that time, and Ruth responded something like, "Well, I had a better year than he did." So I think that was typical of that aspect. Now, the majority of his planets are above the horizon in his chart, so he obviously is far more extroverted than your typical Cancer ascendant and moon in Cancer personality. He seemed to thrive on notoriety and the spotlight. He was really, I think in my mind, was the antithesis of Lou Gehrig, who was somebody that really, in his own way, I believe, liked to bask in the shadow of Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth has the ruler of his first in the first house. Now, I can recall a textbook I had read some time ago, way back someday, and it basically had stated that this position was someone that would generally be triumphant over his or her enemies, And in his own way he was, because through time we could see anybody that tried to vilify the Bambino really hasn't been successful, because his the legend lives on. And despite all the talk about whether he was a drunk, overindulgent, philandering or what have you, it seemed like his good, whatever he did on the field especially, superseded this, largely, at least in a lot of people's eyes. Now, Babe Ruth had a preponderance of planets and water signs, and he also had a grand water trine, at least one grand water trine in his chart. And it shows that this is a person that could be, very insightful, intuitive, very strong emotions, and had a certain feel for others. And I think the fact that the Mercury in Pisces, conjuncting the midheaven, gave him the somewhat maybe intuitive ability, to know what to say, to people and, in the public. Now, another thing that Babe Ruth had in his horoscope, he had Mercury conjunct Venus. Now, it shows at times, I'm not saying he was always like this, he had the ability to be tactful and diplomatic and charming, to people. And interestingly enough, this conjunction made a conjunction to his midheaven. So he was really, I think this is what was attributed to his natural rapport that he had with, like the media and people, in the baseball, in the baseball world in general, media and the press. Another interesting aspect that I look at between him and another chart is that Babe Ruth, his moon, conjuncts the USA's sun in Cancer, based on the July 4th, 1776 Declaration of Independence chart. Also, in addition to that, his moon conjuncts, or I should say the United States moon, conjuncts Babe Ruth's sun, sun sign in Aquarius. So it just shows that, Babe Ruth, really, had great compatibility with the United States, I believe, and I believe this, played a role in this. And the moon being, emotional needs, it seems like, America, was able to satisfy that for him, and vice versa. Now I want to talk about, some, interesting things, or, one, I guess we could say, I want to talk about one thing right now as far as, prominent event in Babe Ruth's life. On December 26, 1919, most baseball fanatics know that this was kind of a critical day, because it was the day when Babe Ruth officially went to the Yankees, and the Red Sox had traded him and got really essentially not a lot in return for this. But on this day, Babe Ruth's progressed Mars conjuncted the natal Pluto, and this was a great transformation that took place in Ruth's athletic life. Not only did this strongly impact Ruth, it had a monumental effect on the annals of baseball history as well. The Boston owner at the time, Harry Frazee, I believe his name was, basically went to the hole of ignominy for this blunder. And on the other hand, it really helped, I guess, enhance, this is the Babe's legacy even more. And Babe Ruth went on to have a Hall of Fame career, playing the majority of the time with the New York Yankees. And as we know, the Yankees, had gone one way and the Red Sox went another. Yankees won numerous World Series after that for the longest time, and Boston had to wait till 2004 to win, their next World Series. Another thing at that time was the Pluto, transiting Pluto, had conjuncted Babe's natal moon at the time, and I guess you could say this transiting, not just that, I believe the sun in Capricorn had gone into, the transiting sun had hit, was right in Babe Ruth's 7th house. And we could look at this and say that, since the 7th house rules relationships, partnerships, that on this day, that one relationship was eradicated with the Boston Red Sox, and another one began with the New York Yankees, and the rest is history. On a personal note, I want to close with, it's very interesting that Ruth's, at this particular moment in time this year, that Babe Ruth's progressed Mercury is conjunct my natal Mercury. It just seems like I was destined, I guess, to talk about him on this day. And another thing that I thought was intriguing is that his ascendant and moon conjunct my natal Sun and Mercury. So I guess I really, that kind of further, I guess, reinforces maybe the fact that, maybe this is preordained in some way. I was meant, and destined to speak about the Bambino. And another thing I want to point out on a non-astrological note was that, Babe Ruth, I understand he wasn't infallible, as I stated before about the, the philandering and being overindulgent and, perhaps, being a drunk, as well, that he superseded, that maybe a lot of ways in people's eyes with his ability on the field and, and compassion he showed to people, I believe especially young people. This is no knock against Aaron, but we look at, Hank Aaron needed about, I'd say, it seemed like 3,000 more at-bats to topple the Bambino's record, and he also needed about, I believe, about 2,000 more plate appearances to do so. And, of course, Barry Bonds, his record, is tainted, because of the steroid scandal and controversy, or at least performance-enhancing drugs, if not steroid, is included. As most of us have heard, he admits to using some kind of either performance-enhancing substance or steroid, but he didn't realize, he's claiming that he didn't realize that's what it was at the time. Well, anyway, people, I just want to close with stating that, Babe Ruth, he might be long gone, but his legacy, the legacy of this venerable player will live on forever and could very well be the greatest athlete that we've ever seen. Sure, the greatest New York Yankee that ever lived. Possibly the greatest baseball player in the world, that ever lived. And also, an argument could be made that he was the greatest athlete as well. Well, until next time, people, when I will continue with my aspect segments, stay well.